Urais Isha Imina. Eila Barechev, Veila Basusim, Venachnu B'Shem, Agenoi, Eloheinu, Naskin. Eima Korban Abovu, Venachnu Kamnu Vanaseda. V'nei Heshia HaMelech Yanenu, V'yem Tovenu. So this parak is continuing about the difference between Tshuva Ilah and Tshuva Tata. Tshuva Ilah is with Simcha. Tshuva Tata is with a broken heart. The way of Tshuva Tata is something which comes first, and then we go to Tshuva Ilah. So then he goes on to explain how is it that a person could do Tshuva and at the same time they could be b'simcha. So he said because you're confident that Hashem has forgiven you. So therefore, even when you think about that part, you are confident, and that gives you simcha. And the basis for that is because Hashem is benevolent, and Hashem is kind, and Hashem loves every yid, as we spoke about this last time, loves every yid with an infinite love, an unlimited love, and therefore Hashem is only too happy to accept our tshuva. All we need to do is come forward. And then he goes on to explain how even on human standards, not to forgive is something which is considered inappropriate and against Torah, and certainly from Hashem's standards. That's number one. And number two, being that Hashem's attributes are infinite, so his forgiveness is infinite, which means that no matter, number one, no matter how grave the sin is, Hashem forgives. And no matter how many times I did the same sin, Hashem still forgives, because for Hashem, one time and a million times is all the same, being that he's infinite. So 1 and a million, it's all the same. And that's how he explained this whole inyan, that in spite of the fact that the person doing tshuva, there's still a basis and a reason why he should be b'simcha. So we are in Igeres Hateshuva, using lessons in Tanya, page 286, 287. The last thing he spoke about was this idea of asking for forgiveness more than many times, and Hashem still forgives, even though it's many times, because Hashem's forgiveness is infinite. So he asked the question, but the Gemara says that if a person does an Aveira and says, I'll do the Aveira and then I'll do Tshuva, then Hashem doesn't accept that Tshuva. So the Rebbe makes a distinction between two things. If a person does the Aveira, and at the time of the Aveira, they're really able to refrain and to hold back, but the thought that they can do Tshuva later is what sort of gives them the push to go ahead and do it anyway. I can do Tshuva later. That kind of situation, that's when Tshuva doesn't help. And the reason is because I used Tshuva. It's like we say, you abuse the Tshuva. You use the Tshuva, this gift that Hashem gave us, you use that to go against them. So then I can't use the Tshuva for that. But if a person does Tshuva, not a person doesn't have Aveira, and then they do Tshuva, and then do the Aveira again, that just means that they did the Aveira, they did Tshuva, and then again they fell into the hands of the Yetzer Hara, and again they did Tshuva, and again they fell in. That doesn't mean that they did it initially with the intention and based on the fact that I can do Tshuva tomorrow. And that kind of situation, Tshuva helps. The second point was brought out that even when a person will use the Tshuva in the way we said before, that he's going to lean on the Tshuva, and that will enable him to do the Aveira, even then, it doesn't say Tshuva doesn't help, because there's nothing in the world that Tshuva doesn't help. It says they won't let him do Tshuva, which means from above, there'll be stumbling blocks in his path, that whenever he makes an effort to do Tshuva, something will happen which will sort of get in the way. But if a person persists and he's determined to do Tshuva and not let anything stop him, then ultimately, even that person, if he doesn't give up, then Hashem will accept his Tshuva. So now we're up to page 287, the last line on the page. Now the Alter Rebbe asks another question, which seems to be contradiction to what we just said. There's a pasuk. We say this pasuk in Tillim, chapter 51, and this is the chapter of Tillim which we say at night before going to bed, which is all about tshuva. It's David HaMelech doing tshuva. And it says, "V'chatasi, my sins are always before me." So wouldn't that mean that a person should always think about whatever I did wrong, and therefore be brokenhearted, and that's a contradiction to what we say here, that there has to be the simcha. So page 288, the Alter Rebbe says, no. Eina mechuven, this doesn't mean liyesh tamid otzev nivze chas v'shalom, that a person should always feel sad and feel humiliated, chas v'shalom, because the words in the pasuk right after that is Tashmi Eini Sasem v'Simcha. Hashem, let me hear gladness and joy. And the next pasuk is V'ruach Nediva Tismecheni, a spirit of benevolence, of kindness, will support me, will uphold me. And the reason is, like we said before, Mishum Zasarachli is called Yama B'Tshuva because generally speaking, a person has to be b'simcha, and tshuva is always being b'simcha. So what does it mean? I should always remember what I did wrong. The Alter Rebbe says the word negedi, as you see, it's in the quotations. Negedi doesn't mean literally opposite me, and it's right facing me all the time. But there's a pasuk. It says v'ata tisyatse min neged. And you should stand at a distance. But there's another pasuk. Mineget saviv lo'il moed. They should be around the tent. They should assemble around the tent. And when it comes to the word mineget, Rashi says meirachik, from the distance. It means that the word mineget means it's there, but it's distant. So that means in our language we would say, I remember it, but it's in the back of my head, not something that I'm consciously thinking about it all the time. But it's there in the back of my head. Why is it even there in the back of my head? So he gives two reasons. One reason is, the purpose in that is, so therefore it doesn't interfere with simcha, because I'm not allowing myself to consciously think about anything that I did wrong. But I'm aware of it. In order to prevent the person from not becoming arrogant and feeling himself superior over others. This will help a person to be humble. Sometimes you see someone and you feel like, wow, I'm better than this person. And of course, that's something which is not a good thing according to Torah, that's arrogance. When a person remembers that I wasn't always in a great place, that will prevent me from feeling that arrogance, feeling superior to the other person. So therefore, David HaMelech said, whatever I did in the past is negative, it's distant, but like I said, it's there in the subconscious, but I'm aware of it. Not aware that consciously, but I'm aware of it. And that'll help me not to put other people down and not to look down in a condescending way on any other person. Then he adds something more. Not only that'll accomplish that, but there's another thing, that when a person remembers things from the past, not only it won't cause them to be sad, it could actually make a person more besimcha. How's that? It could actually help a person in a situation which is when something happens which is undesirable, chas v'shalom, either something happens because a person did something to me, or something happened because Hashem did something to me. It's something that came from Shemayim. Nevertheless, bein min Shemayim, bein adei briyos, v'dibra b'maisa, or someone hurt me physically, or someone hurt me verbally. If I remember that there were things that I did that were undesirable, wasn't supposed to be, and those things I know that was wrong. So when this happens, I feel that this helps me overcome the feeling of sadness. On the contrary, I think to myself, this is something which is going to help my process of cleansing, my process of refinement. And like we said last time, that refinement and cleansing doesn't only mean from an absolute avera. Even after things are sort of cleansed and things are healed, there's still levels of enhancing. I mean, even the Gashmis, the person has a shalom is sick, and then they take medication and they're healed. So that means that the person is no longer sick, but there's more things you can do to feel better physically. You can do things that your intellectual capacity should be improved, that your meter should be improved. Not that I did something bad and now I have to do something good, even if I'm doing things that are good, but to do it better, to do it with more kavanah. I mean, just to give an example, let's say when it comes to serving Hashem, imagine a person that's like a Beinoni in Tanya. Imagine, davens, learns, does mitzvahs, doesn't do any averes, not in thought, not in speech, not in action. Everything's good. But imagine that this person is this way. What motivates them to be this way is because they want all the rewards and they don't want the punishments, physical rewards, and they want to be healthy. They don't want the physical punishments. So therefore, that motivates them to do everything right. So on one hand, he's like a tzaddik. He's doing everything that's supposed to be done. On the other hand, it's lacking refinement. What about a person steps up a little bit higher and he does it not for the physical reward, he's thinking about the spiritual reward. It'll be an olam haba, or in the higher worlds, that reward. What about that? So okay, it's not as coarse as the first person, but it's still, I'm serving Hashem because I'm thinking of my reward, what I'm going to be gaining, what I'm going to be lacking. Higher than that is that I don't do it because of reward, but I do it just out of my love for Hashem. That's all. So you have three levels there. One that does it because of the physical rewards and prevent the physical punishment. One does it for the olam haba reward, which is higher. One does it because no, they love Hashem. And then it says in Tanya, even that is not the ultimate. That I love Hashem, and by me learning and davening and embracing Hashem, I am satisfying my love. It's still about me on a very fine level. Now the Rebbe says there are tzaddikim that are on a higher level. They're not even thinking about this love Hashem is giving me pleasure. It's just about one. All they think is that this is what Hashem wants. So these are all levels in more refined, and sometimes a person did something in the past. It's cleansed, it's healed. But when something happens, the Eibishter is adding another layer of refinement, another layer of cleansing there in the Neshama. So if I remember what happened, and when something goes wrong, I'll look at it in a positive way and understand, again, when something goes wrong, remember, we always have to daven to Hashem, that I should be healthy, I should be well, and everything should be good. We're talking about what should be my perspective on what happened. People get angry, people get depressed, people have all sorts of negative feelings. So the answer is, one of the ways of looking in a positive way is to realize that it's a process of cleansing and it's a process of healing, and it's something which Hashem is doing for me to bring me up to a higher level than I was before. By the way, the Alter Rebbe says this is also good advice, how a person could prevent himself from going into a rage or feeling resentment at things that other people are due to him. And the reason is, like it says, it doesn't explain it here, but there's a famous chapter in Tanya, in the 4th volume of Tanya. It's called Igeres Hateshuva. There's a chapter 25. The Alter Rebbe explains why is it that when a person, the Gemara says, goes into a rage and loses his temper, it's like avodah zarah. Why is it like idol worship? It's a negative character trait. It's a destructive character trait. or what's the connection to idol worship? The Alter Rebbe says because at that moment, it must be that their pure emunah in Hashem is sort of out to lunch. Because had they really had emunah, what's going on now is from Hashem, even though it's a person that's doing it, they would realize that if it's from Hashem, then it's, first of all, Hashem be angry at this person. And second of all, if it's from Hashem, then ultimately it's good. And that's why the Gemara says, page 290, if people are humiliated, but they don't return humiliation to the others, which is the human nature. Someone hits me, I hit him back. Someone humiliates me, I humiliated him. He says something to me, I say something to him. They hear their insults, but they don't retort. People who perform mitzvahs with love, and they accept when Hashem gives them affliction. And anyone who is able to sort of go over and not let it affect him, and doesn't let his midos get in the way, what is the reward? Hashem will forgive all his sins. In other words, when a person is, something happens and I don't lose my temper and I don't get angry and I'm not resentful because I believe that it's all from Hashem, besides the fact that it's just a good character trait to be calm, and it's not a good character to be angry and to be hating and to feel resentment. Besides all that, it shows a much deeper level of emunah in Hashem, recognizing that everything that happens is from Hashem. Even things that people do to me are also from Hashem, number one. And recognizing that everything that Hashem does is good and for the good. And therefore, the person's able to overcome that anger and that resentment and be calm. So actually, he doesn't bring it here, but in the Gemara, it concludes that when Mashiach will come, Hashem will take the sun out of its shade, and the sun will shine. And it says the wicked people will be burnt by the sun, and tzaddikim, they'll be healed by the sun. And these people who do this, they'll merit that, they'll be able to merit the sun coming out of its shade. What's the connection to the sun coming out of its shade? So we learned in Tanya before that Hashem is compared to the sun, the name Havaya, and the name Elokim is compared to the shade, which filters the sunlight and it weakens the sunlight so that we can handle it. So when we see something happen that's negative, really there's two things. There's Hashem doing it, and that has intention which is positive, and it's a bracha, but outwardly we don't see it. So when a person doesn't lose themselves, doesn't lose his temper, doesn't get angry, doesn't have resentment, doesn't have hate, it's because they recognize in their mind that what I see on the outside is only a shade, it's only the outside. Really, it's Hashem, and everything Hashem does is good. Their reward spiritually is the same. That Hashem, which means godly light, is no longer concealed, and they'll see godly light in an open way. Now, of course, by the way, this doesn't mean that a person should allow himself to be stepped on and trampled on. That's not something which Torah encourages or Hasidus encourages. But it just means that I'll let Hashem do what has to be done. My job is not to, I don't have to take revenge, and I have to protect myself. So if there's somebody that's abusing me or somebody that's hurting me, I have to get out of the way so that this person can't do anything to me. But on the other hand, and if, if you do something to the other person, which is because I'm angry, that in a sense means I'm lacking in my emunah in Hashem. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says if a person remembers that they're not perfect, and they remember that thinking happened in the past, and therefore when something happens, they look at it, this is from Hashem, and there's a purpose behind it, and whatever Hashem is doing is to help me rise to a higher and a better place, and help them overcome feelings of anger, resentment towards things that are happening in his life, and especially things that are coming from other people. And this idea is going to continue in the next period. I mean, this is a wide subject. This is just not the place to go into it. The Rebbe talks about the details of Hashgacha Pratis, but I guess the general principle is always remember there's when we talk about the past or the future. If something happened in the past, then I say it's Hashgacha Pratis because it already happened. I know Hashem meant it to happen. But for the future, I have to do everything I can to be healthy, to be well, and to protect myself. Protect myself physically, protect myself emotionally, and protect myself spiritually. So if somebody is let's say speaking to me in a way which is hurtful, I don't say, well, it's all from Hashem, so let me just stand there and take it. That's for sure. I don't have to allow myself to get hurt. On the contrary, I have to protect myself. But whatever did already happen, if it's in the past, and I look back on what does that mean? I say to myself, this is from Hashem, and the purpose is for something positive, and that's my perspective on it. So therefore it doesn't have that kind of negative and destructive effect on it. But for the future, whatever I can do to protect myself, I'm supposed to do. So like a person doesn't feel well, they don't say, okay, no point going to the doctor. Looks like Hashem wants me to have this cold. No. Hashem wanted you to have the cold until this moment. Right now that you became aware of it and you know that you have it, Hashem wants you to go to a doctor. How do I know? It says in the Torah, that a person should heal himself and protect himself. Okay, so being that it's next, it's a continuation, so we'll continue into chapter 12. I know you worry, what are we going to do after this? Don't worry, we have material. Especially in the month of Tishrei, we'll have what to do. One of the reasons for the simcha when a person goes through Yisurim, because in essence, it's something very powerful that brings atonement to a person who committed a sin. The marka b'olam hazeh, to cleanse it in this world. So based on what we said throughout the beginning of this sefer, that when a person does not bear it causes a stain on the neshama. There are different terms that are used as a mashal. Sometimes it says a stain, a defect. So now we're talking about the language of a stain. And you need to clean it. And when the neshama leaves this world, it goes through that process in Shamayim. But when the person goes through the process down here, they don't go through it in Shamayim. That silam amiru b'gehenim, that helps a person that he doesn't have to go through this process after they leave this world. The problem there is saying Eila, especially in our generation, we don't have the ability to fast all those numbers that we learned about before that are found in Tikkun Tshuva Marizal the Bracha. The reason why the Arizal said that for this Avera fast so many times, for that Avera fast so many times, is to cleanse the neshama, to purify the neshama, and by cleansing and purifying the neshama in this world, it won't have to go through cleansing and purification in that world. And why does it make such a difference? What's the difference if it's here or it's there? Well, the Rebbe said it makes a huge difference, huge. Ramban writes, Bagdam the Pirush Iyov. You know, Iyov, in English, it's Job. Iyov was a person that suffered a lot. And in the introduction to Ramban's commentary on Iyov, he talks about the meaning of suffering. And he says, Shafilu Yisurim Shal Iyov Ayin Shana. It's considered as if this person suffered the most a human being could ever suffer. If a person would suffer his suffering for 70 years, Englam Erech Klau has absolutely no comparison to Yisuri HaNefesh, to the suffering of the soul, even shah achas begehenna, even 1 hour in Gehenna. Ki yesh echad mishishim. Remember we said that the Chassidus doesn't talk about Gehenna. Here we are again. But again, the purpose of talking about it is not to use this as a way of frightening us and motivating us not to do an Avera. We explained last time that's not the right reason to be motivated. The right reason to be motivated is out of love and respect and awe of Hashem. But he's just bringing it out to understand the Maila, how amazing it is when a person goes through a little tiny bit of suffering in this world, what it accomplishes. Because up there, suffering, it says 1 hour in Gan Eden is more than 70 years of suffering in this world. It says Eish Echad Mashishim, that a physical fire is the 60th of the fire there. It's not a physical fire there, but it means in terms of the pain. But the Pi Shoyla Bazeh Chesed Yabana, there's a pasuk that says Hashem created this world with Chesed. Hashem created the world in such a way that B'Yisurim Kalin B'Elam Hazeh, when a person goes through mild suffering in this world, Nitzo Medinin Koshem Shav'elam Haba, a little bit of suffering in this world. The Gemara says, what's a little bit of suffering? Imagine you put your hand in your pocket to take out some money, and you realize it's the wrong pocket, it's in the other pocket. Okay, that should be the worst suffering you could ever have. But the mashal is commercial hiluch v'hatokas hatzel ba'aretz tefach. This could be compared to the sun. When the sun shines, we know that you look at the wall, you see there's a shade on the wall. As the sun moves, the shade on the wall moves. The black on the wall moves. So when you see it moving on the wall, tefach, 1 handbreadth, which is just a little bit, what does it mean up there? You think the sun up there just moved 1 tefach? No. The sun up there moved tens of thousands of miles. I once heard the number, it's an astronomical number, it's not just 10,000. It's tens of thousands of miles that it moves up there, and over here, it's a fraction of an inch that moves. So what does that mean? That means when we do something down here, which is a fraction of an inch, the impact up there is like 10,000 or hundreds of thousands of miles. And therefore, if a person suffers a little bit down here, something hurts, mild suffering, this could take away tens of thousands of miles of suffering, so to speak, in that world. And that's how the person could look at it in a positive way. In fact, this is the way it is with Hashem and the world, but even much more than the mashal with the sun. In other words, now the Alter Rebbe is going to say that this is a general principle that applies, that a little thing in this physical world has an impact in the spiritual world, which is hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands, much more than what you see you did down here. Kineda, as it's known, it says in the Zohar, that we can cause the higher spiritual worlds to ascend. We do things down here, and up there, there's a lot going on. For example, a person brings a carbon, a bird, ben yaina. Either the offering is a dove or a pigeon, agabi mizbeach, or even less than that, kaimetz mincha, just a handful of flour. Imagine, takes a little bit of flour, puts it in his hand, and that's the carbon. So the Zohar says, what you're doing down here is not a big deal, flour. But up there, you're causing hundreds of thousands of millions and billions of details in all these different spiritual worlds that they go up to a much higher level. And not only that, but the Alter Rebbe explains in another place, and every little detail makes a difference. Like if I do it with my right hand, certain things, it makes it happen. If I do it with my left hand, it doesn't happen. Even a carbon, it says, does things up there that are beyond human comprehension. It's called, like people try to understand why did Hashem allow such a thing like a carbon. So it says it's Raza the Kurban and Raza the Ein Sof. It's Ola ad Raza the Ein Sof. It's something which comes from a place which is infinite, beyond human comprehension. But imagine if a person brings a carbon, does everything right, but at the time that it brings the carbon, his thought is not the right thought. He's thinking, I'll eat this 2 days, and really you're only allowed to eat it 1 day. Maybe you remember we learned about this recently. So all he did was think. That thought will not allow all these changes in all these worlds to happen. He has the right thought, then hundreds and thousands and millions of malachim and neshamas and worlds are affected by the thought that I had. So you have an esrog, you have a lulav. A little tiny thing could either make the difference of what's going to go on up there, what's not going to happen. Again, today with technology, we can understand this mushroom a little bit, because when you have a certain device, whatever it may be, and you move it a fraction of an inch, it can make a difference. You can either turn on the light in thousands of buildings by moving something 1 inch, or you can turn off all the lights if you're in the power plant, turn something down, the switch, then hundreds of thousands or millions of people lose light. All I did was a small little move, but this small little move is connected. Same thing here. What happens down here is connected to all the spiritual worlds. And whatever we do here affects all the spiritual worlds. And the main thing is that a little bit here accomplishes infinite, not more things up there, nowhere to compare to the little bit of thing that I did down here. That's the last line. The same as with all the physical mitzvahs, that tzitzis, tefillin, even the Sefer Torah. When you read from a Sefer Torah, it accomplishes great things. But if there is one letter, there are how many letters on the Sefer Torah? 300 and whatever, thousands of letters. And if there's one letter, that one part of the letter, the ink, is rubbed out, naturally depends on how much, but a little tiny bit in a certain spot, the whole Torah becomes disqualified and doesn't accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish. How can it be that one little thing should make such a huge difference? And that's the way Hashem set up the worlds, that our world affects all the worlds, and the little thing down here is multiplied by hundreds of thousands and millions of times up there. So this applies to everything. A simple act. A person gives $1 to tzedakah, gives a dime to tzedakah. We just see a dime put into a pushka. Okay, how much food is the person going to have already? But Lamaila, this changes worlds. And this is what our sages said. It says you should be holy, you should sanctify yourself, and you shall be holy. And the Gemara says it's being repetitious. You should sanctify yourself and be holy. Isn't that the same thing? It says no. It means like this: a person sanctifies himself a little bit down here. Then he becomes sanctified in a much greater measure up there. Remember, we said before, the Alter Rebbe said that when you do a mitzvah, which is again a physical act, I'm doing the mitzvah with tzitzis, with tefillin, a mezuzah, lighting Shabbos candles, making a bracha on something. Nevertheless, what am I drawing down? Not Stam Hashem's light which is infinite, that all the spiritual worlds can't contain that light, and by me doing this mitzvah, I'm bringing down that light.
For doing any mitzvah?
Any mitzvah. The difference between mitzvahs are which aspect in Hashem, which attribute in Hashem, but the idea that when I do something in the physical, it has an effect spiritually in a way which is infinitely greater than the first little act that I did. That's something which is common by all mitzvahs. So the same applies to reward and punishment. Reward and punishment. The reward for mitzvah is a mitzvah. In other words, when a person does a mitzvah, they draw down a certain light of Hashem, and that light is the source of the reward that they're going to get. And that light is infinitely greater than the little act that I've done. And that's explained somewhere else in detail. Das another knuckle. This knowledge is basic. And those who are intelligent will discover more the good in this. Basically means there's so much more to learn about this and go into more details, but this is the explanation in a general way, in a more superficial way. Okay, we've completed Igeres Hateshuva, and now can be Simcha Tshuva. Okay, see what's in the table, the Shem in the Sukkah. Ariel Malka, we weren't here yesterday, but we said that last week on Thursday you raised the question, what's all the how come we don't see the results of all the Trankut and all the other things? I'm saying that was on Thursday. On Friday, there were big results in the world. And it's not just that, it's really we don't have the words. I'm sure if we'd have someone here from the Israeli military to describe to us the achievements that have been happening, they attribute to the Israeli army, but these are real all miracles that Hashem is performing on a daily basis. Like I said yesterday, that anything that an army does, anything, any operation, so many things go. And when it goes through successfully, one after the other, the precision and all the details, that is a miracle. So we should continue to see miracles. And therefore we should continue with Tillim and continue with Tzedakah and Tzedakah with Zankim.